Good afternoon. My name's James Mulvaney. Welcome to Working Lunch. We're going out live right now across LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, etc. You know the drill. Every single Wednesday at 1 o'clock UK time, we talk to a different guest and we discuss 3 actionable strategies that you can implement in your business to start growing your business, growing your team, or growing your audience. So each session is streamed live. If you can't watch today's session, you want to watch it another time, feel free to watch on demand. It will be available on all those platforms to watch again. And if you have any questions for myself or my guest today, please put them in the comments. They will be fed back to us, and we're going to be doing a bit of Q&A at the end. So my guest today is George Sullivan. He's founder and CEO of The Sole Trader. So without further ado, let's bring our guest in. Hey, George, how's it going?
Hi, James. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing? I have to correct you as well. I hate to. Sole Supplier.
Sole Supplier. Sorry.
It's okay, because unlike them, we are the only place you need to buy your next pair of footwear.
There we go. So just for those of you who don't know George, please can you start just by introducing yourself and just talk a bit about your background and how you got involved in the footwear industry, and also tell us about the Sole Supplier and what you do.
Yes, so around 10 years ago, a little bit like you've explained before, I got the bug for buying trainers. And I mean, millions of people can relate to this now because this industry is worth like, 100 billion. So it's a growing industry. It's huge. Casual trainer market is massive for men and women. So I got into it around 10 years ago and set up the Sole Supplier to help people find footwear from, 100 different retailers. So we're a content site with a search and comparison angle. And we work with 100 different retailers to give you the latest and greatest shoes with the latest prices and availability. So basically, we are the only place you need to find your next pair of shoes.
That's a good summary. It's interesting because before we started the show, I was just showing you, like, I've caught this bug a little bit over the last probably like 2-3 years. This is one of my latest pairs. I've got another pair down here in a box that I've not even opened yet. And I know there are a lot of people who just they're almost like collector's items now. You know, some people have whole rooms I've seen just dedicated to trainers. And quite often people just have one specific brand as well. I've noticed this. So people will either sit on the Nike fence or sit on the Adidas fence. So, I think it's a really interesting consumer behavior, but it's one of these things where people are buying them as almost like a hobby now. So it's like people will go to the end of the earth to spend money and acquire that sort of coveted pair of trainers, which when you can tap into a market where consumers are that hungry, there's a great opportunity.
Yeah, so exactly that. I mean, even for like 30 years, people have been collecting trainers.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that's blown up more in the past 10. It's become a lot more mainstream, and it's kind of like watches. People buy expensive watches and keep them, and then they're worth more. Actually, now there's hundreds of pairs of trainers that you can buy at retail that are actually worth more in 2 years' time. They can be 3-4 times what they were worth at retail. So the shoes are now actually a good investment, and that's why this market is so interesting as well. It's not just something that loses money.
Let's have a chat later about the market in more detail, because I'm interested to kind of learn a bit more about this. I know we were just chatting about StockX and sites like that before. But let's kick off today's session. So obviously when you started the Sole Supplier, you started with, on a shoestring budget. So first topic today, how to start a business with less than $100 or £100. Is that something you can still do?
Something you can still do, yeah. I think you could actually... you can actually do it with less, couldn't you? Because if you've got a passion and you want to communicate that passion through social media, you can set up an Instagram profile and a TikTok account for free. And you can start creating content on one of those channels for free. So, but my strategy was always create a website, because a website is an asset. I was always about having that asset rather than relying on social channels, which we do very heavily, but that's a small part of the bigger picture. But you can buy a domain name. Like we was talking a little bit about this. You can buy a domain name. You can set up a WordPress blog. You can get a nice theme for like £20, and you can begin writing articles, probably for around £80 altogether, all in.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
So let's rewind. You've been going for about 5 years, right? So let's rewind 5 years. what were you doing before, and how did you, what kind of led you down this path in the first place? What were your first few steps to kind of get this thing off the ground?
Yes, I think it's important to know, like for people to know that I had no prior knowledge in this industry, say in a tech fashion. Like I didn't understand much about technology. I was self-taught. So I was reading a lot of different books from when I was around 15 years old. And I was inspired by my mum and dad, particularly my dad, who was a business owner. He'd run businesses, some had succeeded, some had failed. And he was always like, don't do a 9 to 5, do something for yourself.
Yeah.
So
that's really interesting. I'm exactly the same. My dad was always like, the best thing I ever did was go self-employed. He had lots of different jobs growing up, and sort of before he had kids. And he always said, just employment is the way to go, because it just gives you so much freedom and flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. He was like, you don't want to work for someone else. So same sort of thing. So that was kicking around in my head. But I left school at 18. I didn't go to uni. I wasn't great at school. And I was working in sales jobs. And my goal was just to save up around £10,000 when I was around 23. I was like, I need to get £10,000 for whatever reason. I thought that was the amount of money I needed to start a business.
Right.
Little did I know that I didn't need that much money at all, but that was like a security amount for me. So I made a decision, working in recruitment. I was like 6 months of not going out, stopped drinking completely, stopped seeing a lot of my friends. I made those sacrifices and I managed to get together that money. And then I would set up the Sole Supplier in the evenings when I'd come home from my recruitment day job, and I'd work on it at night, because and I did that for like 9-10 months in the early days. Yeah.
So do you think it's, to some extent, it's about sort of self-discipline then? Do you think if you're going to start a business on such a low budget, there has to be some kind of sacrifice in terms of your personal life?
Yeah. Even to the point now, like there has to be sacrifice, I would say. Even now, like even dealing with a level of success, if you want to get to that next level, you have to sacrifice things, right? It's tricky. So, but definitely the sacrifice for me is what set me apart and set me up. If I didn't do that, say like if I was still going out drinking at the weekends and I was drinking in the week with my recruitment friends who were winning deals, right? Then I would not want to come home. I would be tired. I wouldn't want to work in the evenings.
You kill your motivation. Exactly.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you kill your motivation, and it doesn't mean forever. It doesn't mean forever. It just means for a period of time.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, because when I first started, I was very young. I was like 16, but I didn't really have much of a social life then. I was a bit of a nerdy kid. And so I was just sat, I just go home and I'd be in my bedroom on the computer learning how to sort of perfect my craft. And I think, probably then I did go off to university, interestingly, but I kind of used that to kind of grow a bit of a personality and a bit of a social life, I guess, get those life skills in, which I think are also really important. But I think those kind of first couple of years where I was just really just this nerdy kid in his bedroom, kind of just focusing on things, that probably gave me the head start, because I sort of learned the skills I needed. I got some kind of money coming in terms of, back then it was like a part-time job really. But, I sort of then used that to turn it into a sort of a proper business after I graduated.
Yeah, I think the more you can lap up, like in terms of reading books, looking at courses online, and speaking to other people that have been there and done it. Well, in your early days, the more inspiration you can get and knowledge you can get, that's going to really spur you on when you're actually starting your business, because all of a sudden things start clicking and you're like, oh, I remember when I read that person told me that. The more you can take in, the better.
So what sort of business would you recommend someone starts if they have such a little amount of money to begin with?
I would just take what you're passionate about and what you love and start talking about it online. So for me, I'll tell you why it worked for me. So I'm 23 years old. I'm in recruitment. I'm buying these shoes to wear, but I'm also buying some of these shoes to resell because I wanted to make extra money, because that was important to me, because I wanted to do my own thing. So I was spending hours, James, like looking for information to find out where these shoes were coming out. That was my passion. I needed to know it. So for me, it just made sense to take what I knew and put it out online. So I started putting that out on the website and Twitter. And that was easy for me because I had the info because I was doing all the work. So
almost like sort of like tip-offs, insider knowledge. Is that what it was to kind of begin with?
There was a lot of actual like phone-in stores. I would phone stores like retail stores and find out, are you releasing these shoes online? So I would kind of get inside info.
Right,
and then I would post that, and then I would look on Twitter as well. And then over time, I would start getting inside info. And then over time, we would work closely with the brands as well. So we would actually work directly with them. But my answer to your question is, if you've got something you love, just start talking about it online, and people will detect that passion, man, and that will resonate with other people. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think also the other key point to make there is if you're following your passion, then you kind of have like endless motivation for it. If you're doing something that you're not really that interested or not really engaged with, or your heart's not in it, it makes it a lot harder to actually make a success of it, because it feels more like work. And I always think when you're starting out, it should be part of it should be hard work for sure, but you should also be enjoying it and learning and having fun and kind of enjoying that initial, like when I think back to when I started my business, it's, I have such good memories of it. It was really fun. Generally, like loved every second.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, basically once you're up and running, there's obviously a lot going on. And once you sort of start making a few quid online, maybe you've got a affiliate marketing business, you're making an income, which is, I think a lot of people are in this position where they want to make enough to quit their jobs, which can be a different amount depending on, what stage of your career you're at, etc. I think the younger you are, the easier it is to do because you've got less to lose. And, quite often if you start when you're young, you don't have mortgages, you don't have, kids, etc. So how do you stay motivated and build a sort of bulletproof mind in a busy world where there's like so many distractions?
Yeah. So you said a few things there about like leaving your job.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave my job, even though I loved the job. Like, shout out Ben Fleming. If you're still watching this, he's one of my good mates from the recruitment days. I still talk to him now,
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave this guy and some of the other lads there and Larry, because I didn't. It's crazy. It took me years to find a job I liked, and then I left for my own business.
Okay.
But the point about leaving your job, think about your responsibilities. I was paying rent to my family at the time, and quite a large chunk of it, because things weren't as good for us as they should have been at the time financially as a family, and I was living at home. So it was a big risk for me to leave my job. So in my head, I needed 25 grand in the bank from my business. And I tell you now, James, that didn't happen. I didn't start earning any money with the Sole Supplier until around month 7.
Interesting.
Like I'm telling you, like it was pounds and tens of pounds over that first 6 months. And the reason was because I couldn't get any stuff ranking in Google, and we weren't getting accepted onto affiliate programs from the retailers. So we were really struggling. But all of a sudden, just after month 6, we got our first #1 Google ranking for the white Huarache. Do you remember? Do you know that shoe, the Huarache?
I've heard of it. I don't know if I know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's a real crazy looking shoe. It's like a sandal looking shoe. It's modeled on a sandal. But the point here is that I was ready to like quit after around 6 months, because I was feeling burnt out. I was making those sacrifices and it wasn't getting somewhere. I wanted to leave my job. I was pressuring myself and I wasn't getting the money in that I wanted. And it just wasn't taking off. I couldn't get stuff ranking in Google. But success was just around the corner, And after 4 months after that, I was able to leave my job. I got just over 20 grand in the bank.
Wow.
And then it started taking off. So I'm glad I stuck with it.
That's a very interesting story, and I think that's I'm always a big believer in perseverance as well. Like, I think it's easy as an entrepreneur to get really distracted sometimes, because part of what we do is you have to come up with ideas, you have to come up with new opportunities, and sometimes you've got this kind of like almost like this little monkey sat on your shoulder saying, "Oh, how about this idea? How about this idea?" And I remember in the early days, I used to register so many different domain names with I'd have an idea one week and I'd register a domain for it, and then I'd have an idea 3 weeks later, and the problem is if you kind of digress too much and go off on too many different tangents, you can't focus on what's working, or you can't give something enough opportunity to actually start working. So I think sometimes patience is important, and you've just got to stick at it. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about in the early days knowing your focus.
Yeah,
because after around the first year, I started to lose my focus and think that, oh, I'm an entrepreneur now, I can set up another business.
Yeah.
And I tell you what I did. I actually set up a business, which was quite a good idea. It was, shout out my mum, Sue, who actually came up with this. She was traveling on the trains, and she was getting pissed off that she couldn't get refunds from the trains.
Okay.
So we created an app called Trains from Hell, which would help you get refunds from trains.
Okay.
But this actually needed a lot of time and investment, and I completely diluted my time, and the Sole Supplier suffered as a result of me trying to run the Trains from Hell app. So I'm with you on that. You need to focus. Even though the Trains from Hell idea was good, I had something that was doing well and that was building the momentum nicely. But then my crazy mind was like, oh, you can set up 2 businesses and run them. But you just have so much time. It's not, everyone looks at Elon Musk and thinks, I can be Elon Musk, I can have 6 companies. But I'm telling you, it's not that easy.
It's not. I mean, we I'm running 3 different products now simultaneously: podcast.co, matchmaker.fm, and radio.co. And it's one of the things we've had to do to do that is scale and have more team behind us, because you can only do so much when you're on your own, or even when you have a small team. There's only so much that people can handle. So especially if you're building products online, one of the things I've noticed is you have to have development teams focused on each product, because if you take your eye off the ball on one product, then you start losing momentum, or customers start getting annoyed because there's bugs that start appearing, or that sort of stuff. So the way I suppose Elon Musk does it is he's just got a lot of resource, and they have very good like CEOs for managing each company for him. So in the early days, I think you've just really got to focus on what is working. That's sort of is testament to it.
And then if you're going to plan something, you need to plan the resource. I mean, again, Dewi, our head of SEO, she's very hot on me when I say, hey, let's do this. She's like, resource, it's going to need this much time, this many people, you're going to need this much budget. And in the early days, I just thought I was invincible and could do everything, and with a few people. And like you say, it's not that simple. Yeah.
Cool. Right, just quickly, if anyone has any questions for George or myself, please put them in the comments. They will be fed back to us at the end, and we'll be doing a bit of a Q&A on anything we're talking about today. Okay, so when you let's sort of move on to the next topic. When you were sort of up and running, what were the biggest challenges you faced, and how did you scale it? How did you take your business from kind of just you to sort of having a team, and to sort of turning it into something that had real kind of momentum and legs?
So I've never really thought of this one, but
yeah,
this is quite important. The scaling thing. So I was at a point where I had a team of 5 freelancers. I had a few writers, a social media person, and a developer. And I was working from my parents' spare bedroom. The overheads were really low. I was running all my own Facebook ads, and it was like a machine that was working very well. And the profit margins were crazy. I can't even tell you what they were right now.
Yeah.
Like 100% margins sort of thing. It was insane. Yeah. So it was a golden era for the business, and it was working. But the scary thing for me was taking it to the next level would have actually meant eating up all of that profit. And buying an office, hiring the people that I needed to, and actually probably running at breaking even for a year or a year and a half. And that was a big decision. And my best friend, Dan, who I've known for 25 years, he started working with me, and he really helped inspire me to reach this inner ambition that I have, which is to take it up here. Yeah. But it was just getting past that fear. And I think that's a big thing for a lot of people, getting past the fear of scaling fast and how to handle it. And we did. We took the jump. We got the office. We started hiring more people, and I haven't looked back. And
interesting.
I remember that every time now. I'm at that point where I'm thinking about scaling next.
Yeah. So here's a good question for you. You were mentioned that you were sort of petrified, because I remember being in this position as well. Like, I think when you take on your first full-time member of staff, it is intimidating as hell, because suddenly you're just not responsible for paying yourself. You're responsible for someone else's livelihood as well. And then when you start hiring more staff, and then you got like, well, they've got kids, so I'm responsible for their bread and butter, basically. It's a lot of responsibility, especially in the early days. I think, as you progress, you kind of get your head around it a bit more. But I remember feeling exactly like that. So did you actually end up breaking even, or did it work where you took that risk, you took on more staff, and actually the revenue increased, so you didn't lose out in terms of profit margins?
Yeah, good question. We did end up breaking even, and have done. I mean, that, like, the growth for us has kind of been like that. There's this plateau, and then last year was the biggest plateau of like a year of breaking even, and we've since like grown a little bit. But then what's happened with COVID has stalled things a little bit. So yeah, there's always moments of like where I'm all about reinvesting. I've never been one to rip the money out of the business and like spend it all on me, and like big houses, big cars, loads of clothes. Like, that's not me. I'm conservative. I want the business to win, and I want my team to be happy. I'm not looking to drive around in a Range Rover whilst my team are hungry. Like, that's crazy,
So but did you find that when you started taking those members of staff on, it allowed you to focus on the bigger picture?
Yeah, that's something I've learned. As the founder or as the CEO, you actually need to be doing the things that make the business grow. Rather than constantly holding on to the things that you're good at because you started doing them, but you should be delegating and letting go. And that's, I think, like a common tough thing for everyone, isn't it? Even senior team members, they get so good at something, they don't want to let their baby go. They don't want to let that task go because they worry it might not be done as well.
I remember feeling exactly like that a few years back, because especially in the early days when it's you on your own, you definitely have to wear many hats, and you kind of become a jack of all trades and master of none. But then I found it really refreshing when I'd hire people who would actually be like, in the early days, I learned to code somewhat, right? And I used to think I was a really good developer. And when I first started hiring developers, John, who I hired to begin with, who's now our CTO, I hired him and I was like, this guy's amazing. And I thought, everything I thought about myself as a developer was completely wrong. I was rubbish. And I haven't written any code now for probably about 8 or 9 years. But, it's just, I think that's the thing when you get to that stage where, you've got to accept that actually you're not always the best at everything as well. I think you can it's good to hire people always who impress and who kind of know more than you. I think that's kind of the key to growing a business as well.
Yeah, knowing what you're good at, right?
Yeah, and strengths and weaknesses, all that sort of standard stuff.
Yeah, you might be able to code, but it might take you 6 hours compared to the guy that's good at it that can take half an hour.
Yeah, precisely. And also as well, one of the things that I've learned in more recent years is just, as you grow as well, you need to become more organized and have more systems and processes in place, for sure, to allow kind of collaboration. And it's interesting because the last few months, I think, has tested a lot of businesses. So obviously you mentioned you were in an office. I'm guessing you're all working remotely now.
Yeah, we're all working remotely. And I just want to say that not just me who thinks this, but our senior team as well. Like, everyone's working better than ever. Everyone's working as a stronger team. Everyone's really supportive of each other and more productive, it seems. So, like, we're not going to change. We're not going to go back to the way it was before. We're going to let people work how they want.
I can totally agree. It's been a big eye opener for me, I think. I used to like having an office, and I do think there is pros and cons to it, but I think you're dead right. I think we're going to be a lot more flexible moving forward as well. Cool. Okay. Let's take some questions, shall we?
Sure.
First question I've got, I know you've got a podcast, and I'm interested first of all as to how that's been for you as a business, how much success you've had with your podcast, and why you decided to go into podcasting.
Yeah, we had some really good success. We've actually put it on hold for now.
Right.
But we had some really big guests on the podcast.
Yeah.
As I think you saw.
Yes,
and
that
one
was
of
my
our
next question.
yeah, we had some really great guests on there. I love talking to people generally. But yeah, just some of the people we had, like David Beckham, and then owners of different shops as well.
Yeah.
We had around London, owners of different stores, people from Nike, designers. But David Beckham was a big one.
So that's my next question. How do you get David Beckham on your podcast? That's an
that actually came via Nike.
Right.
Sorry, via Adidas.
Yeah.
And they just said, look, we've seen you doing good things with the podcast, getting some good views and listeners. David Beckham's in town. Would you like him to jump on? We said that'd be amazing. Yeah.
That's incredible. So
yeah.
I think to sort of just dissect that, because that's like that's got to be one of the ultimate podcast guests of all time, especially for someone in your industry. The collaboration, making sure that you're actually collaborating with other companies is important. That opened doors in itself. So the fact that the guys at Nike, the guys at Adidas, and have those collaborations in place, that opens up opportunities, would you say?
Yeah, and I think also if you're doing things in an authentic way and you're just doing you, then you're going to get noticed in the right way. And just to keep doing that, kind of in the same way that I've been putting out more content on my personal channels about motivation, business advice, people start to pick up on it and they say, do you know what, I relate to this person. So I think that's just, if you're following your passion again, it gets noticed. It does come back to that. Yeah,
and I think also as well, like, it's rewarding, isn't it, if you can inspire one person to take action, or someone's sat there, say, watching this, thinking of starting a business, and if you can just influence that one person to actually go and take the plunge, it could be life-changing for them. And I think it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, that's it. That's so powerful for me as well, when people message and say, look, George, thanks for that video, because I've actually done this week and started doing this off the back of it. So I'm fully with you. That's my biggest mission right now, is to help others and inspire people in business and people that are starting business. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Right. Let's take some questions. So if anyone's got any, please put them in the comments. But we'll get started on the few questions we had already. Firstly, from Daniel Prescott. Hi, George. Any tips on how to make Facebook for your friends rather than foes when it comes to advertising across both platforms? I guess maybe they mean across Instagram and Facebook there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think basically it means how to get the best out of the platform.
Yeah.
I would say, so what have we done? Something that's going to work for everyone is split testing.
Yeah.
So taking your budget of whatever you've got, let's say you've got £20 to spend in the day, and making sure you run like 6 variations of the same advert, but changing the caption. So changing a few words in the caption, do 6 variations of the caption, 6 different images, but basically it's all for the same thing. You're going to get the best idea of what works, what captions work, what images work. It's the best way to understand your spend, and that is going to make Facebook your friend more than your foe. It's easy to waste money on there. So you need to keep testing to understand what works best.
Yeah, and the idea, of course, then is if you start off with really small, they call it micro budgets, don't they, for different campaigns, and then you can see that if one specific kind of combination of the right caption and an image, and it's really weird, isn't it? Because sometimes you'll have the same caption with 2 different images, and it'll work. One will work better than the others, or you'll have the same image with 2 different captions, and vice versa. But which one's working, then you can say, right, let's put more budget behind that specific ad set, and that will work, and it will deliver better results for you as a business. Okay, right. Next up, this is a very broad question from Dave Brown. What is the best strategy that you found to get your business out there?
Oh, I can't see that one for some reason. What is a better strategy to get your business out there?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Yeah, that's the question from Dave Brown.
Best strategy to get your business out there. So I'll give you a story of what worked for me in the early days. Facebook was a good platform for me. There was lots of organic reach on Facebook, and I grew on Twitter as well organically, just by posting good content first. I was the first person with the info. Nowadays, what we're seeing is really good organic reach on TikTok and on LinkedIn. as well, where you don't have to pay for it.
Yep,
so it's about understanding the platforms that are good organically nowadays and using them to the best of your ability, and just testing things again. Like, don't hold back. Don't try and be too perfect with your content. Just put stuff out, look at the engagement, see how it works. And the main thing is, Dave, is build your own audience. So if you're using all these platforms like Google, Facebook, Insta, make sure you're generating your own audience through emails. And if you've got an app signups, because the day that these platforms change is the day that you are screwed. Because if you haven't got your own emails and your own list, it's dangerous. You're in a risky position. Yeah.
I think that's really good advice, because if Facebook changed their algorithm, was it like 2 years ago? And there was a lot of businesses that really suffered as a result, because they were reliant solely on the fact that you could get high amounts of organic engagement on pages. And of course, nowadays you have to really, if you want to get a lot of organic engagement, if you want to get engagement on pages, I think you have to pay, don't you, basically?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. That's really good advice. This is from Cassina. I have a podcast show at the moment, but how do you start a clothing brand with a budget?
I have a podcast show at the moment, but how do you start a clothing brand with a budget?
Yeah.
Good question. Do you know what? I've thought about this a lot. We've run through a few iterations of our own clothing as well. Right. And the most important thing that we know from being in this industry with clothing is make sure that you deliver on your promise. And what I mean by that is make clothing that's great quality, that lasts, that is so good when you get it out the packet. I'll give you an example. A brand called Cole Buxton. Cole Buxton, I've got one of their t-shirts somewhere here. Even this t-shirt, right? This is a thick cotton t-shirt, a thick collar. Like it's the right sizing, and it's like really nice material. When I pulled this out the packet, I was like, that's good value for money. I think the biggest thing you can do with a clothing brand is make sure the quality is high.
There's been a couple of I won't name any names. I can't remember actually what it was, but there was this t-shirt brand. I bought a bunch of t-shirts from them last year. Saw them, and it was one of these Instagram sort of adverts, and the quality was just rubbish. They looked great on the pictures. The quality was rubbish. I washed them once, and they were just like all kind of frailing around the edges, and and I commented on one of their adverts just saying, this is rubbish, and they deleted it. So completely disingenuous. And I think quality gives you something to stand out, because obviously most of the major manufacturers don't pay a lot of attention to quality. It's mass produced. So if you produce something that's better quality than everything else, and I've noticed this now, that there seems to be more and more of these sort of boutique clothing brands popping up. There's one called Perceival I've ordered a few things from, and the quality is just fantastic. I've been really impressed every time. It's a little bit more expensive, but it just lasts. And I think consumers appreciate that, because for so long, people have just relied on buying clothes from bulk, retailers, basically, or high street retailers, and the quality's just not been up there. So it gives you, if you're an online retailer, you have that opportunity to get cut through. And
it's like you say, if you've actually spent money. So let's think about it in a digital marketing sense. Let's use this analogy. We acquire customers to the Sole Supplier website, and we use Facebook and Instagram, and it costs us however much. Then our next part is like retention, all the content, and then the sign-ups and making sure they're retained. So with clothing, it's like you're going to spend that money to acquire your customer. Your retention strategy is the quality on your clothes. Like, that's going to retain, like you said, you bought that brand of clothing, the quality was bad, you're not going to go back there, man. So quality seals the deal and keeps the audience coming back.
Cool. All right, what's next? So better to outsource or have an in-house team?
I would say I've outsourced. In-house is, sorry, I was thinking something else. In-house, definitely. If you can afford to go in-house, go in-house. My experience with development is I use freelancers. I use freelancers here and in India. Shout out Nicole, who was our Indian freelance developer, and he was amazing. I still speak to him to this day. But it was just tough with the time barrier and the communication. And there was mistakes that were made as well. In-house, if you can afford it, you'll get so much. Actually, not if you can afford it. Because if you're using an agency, you'll pay more in the long run than you would if you just paid for it in-house. Because the agency's splitting your time with others. You're not getting the quality and the focus you need. Go in-house if you can.
Yeah. Also, if you're going for an agency, especially if it's, you know, like local, you're paying for their overheads as well. You know, you're paying for their fancy offices and all that sort of stuff. I completely agree. I've always been a big fan of in-house. But as I say, you know, I think you mentioned this earlier. I've sort of changed my perspective on in-house now, meaning, you know, you can employ people who are working for you.
Yes.
But they could be distributed. They don't have to necessarily be in your office. So, but at least you're paying that person directly. You know that their time and attention is focused solely on what you set them to do, whatever task that might be.
Yeah, that's the important thing that you just said there, James. It's like you're paying someone to focus on your business rather than trying to split their time, and which you lose continuity. It's what we were saying at the start about when you're trying to split your time between too many things. They all suffer as a result. So yeah, like you say, it doesn't matter where they are as long as they're focused on your business 90% of the time. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Next up, when hiring, what are the most important roles to fill first? I think that varies depending on a business, doesn't it? Really, but
when hiring, what are the most important roles to fill first? Yeah. If it's a digital business, then I would hire a senior social media expert. And the reason I say that is because that person's going to be able to create things that are going to go viral for your brand to elevate it fast. You basically want like a social growth hacker type person. And I use that word even though it's a cliche phrase, because that person's going to understand all the mechanics of the social networks. They're going to be a good analyzer of competitors, so they understand what's working. And then they're going to be able to understand what they need to create for your business in order to make stuff go viral. Because listen, there's a lot of gains to be had still on social. And if you know how to tap into it, it probably is the quickest way you can blow up your business with the right content quickly. Yeah, we're still seeing it to this day.
Great advice there. Next one from Skylark Live. I'm gaining ground on social media, but I want to monetize my brand. How would you start monetizing your brand on social media?
Well, I've never seen. So for us, the website and app is where we monetize our audience. You know, if people want to use the website and app to find out more about shoes, we earn a small commission when they buy. For us, like social media is just a shop window. It's where we show off what's cool about the industry and we use it to engage. Like, I think as soon as you start trying to be overtly obvious about monetizing your social audience, it turns people off a little bit because they're on social media a lot of the time to consume content, not necessarily be directly sold to. Now, even though like brands like Nike, Adidas are selling directly within Instagram, I think what you want is a nice even split of content that's engaging. So let's say 70% engaging content, and then 30% of it will be sales type content. Like, here's this shoe, do you want to buy it, sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you go too much down the sales route and people just see it as sort of spammy or people aren't engaged enough, they'll just unfollow or they'll just like look past what you're doing. So that's a good sort of measure, 70. But also as well, you know, if you haven't got a product to sell, selling stuff as an affiliate is a good way to test a market as well, you know, and think about what products complement your brand or complement your audience. Because, you know, for example, the advice that we give to a lot of podcasters who are saying, I want to generate some revenue from podcasting is, you know, you don't always have to have something to sell, which is yours, and e.g. your product, but you can use your audience as something to say, you know, have you checked out this service or have you checked out that product? But it has to be relevant to the audience. I think that's the other kind of key point to make there.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, affiliate marketing can work very well.
Yeah. All right, George. Well, listen, thanks very much for your time. Been a pleasure speaking to you. If anyone wants to find out more about what you do or if they want to get in touch, how can they do so?
So if you want to find your next best pair of footwear, then it's at the Sole Supplier across Instagram, you know, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. And if you want to follow me, I'm always talking about business and helping other entrepreneurs out there. And it's George Sullivan TSS on Instagram and George Sullivan on LinkedIn and Twitter. So yeah, I'd be happy to talk to you.
Cool. Right. Well, thanks for joining us